I like to think that when I started the company nearly 40 years ago, that there was a real deep desire to be able to demonstrate something about how a company could be successful and be good with people at the same time. And that kind of came out of my 60s upbringing, and it was kind of an interesting time in my life, and you always are what you were when type of thing. And so that carried with me, although at the first stages of the business, you're working at building things and making things happen, and yet there's this interest in seeing if we can't demonstrate something that's even better in how people are treated, for instance. And so I did some early on experiments, tried not to have a rule book, for instance, and tried to assume that people were just going to come with their own desires. And I learned that I needed to have a few rules, that I had to have some basic things that people could relate to, and that actually people wanted that sort of understanding and guidelines. And we ended up calling them guidelines as opposed to a rule book. And I tried to create it in a positive way. Do this as opposed to not do this. And so those are some of the early things that we did. It really wasn't until the 90s that we started having some real clear understanding of what this whole kind of system approach to what now people call sustainability. And that language didn't come really to me until really early 2000s in terms of understanding that there was a language around sustainability. We did some work in the 90s around trying to figure out how to employ people on welfare and do it successfully and do it beneficially for both them and ourselves. And that proved to be quite positive. And I ended up doing a case study at Cornell University, and that case study was about was unrelated to the social side, but it was allowed me to get in front of the class and be able to tell them what I was thinking about and what we actually ended up doing in that case. And I'm still teaching that case to this day, as a matter of fact. But at one point in time, this is an entrepreneurship class, the professor turned to me and said, why don't you talk about your business a little bit in broader terms? And I did, and I started talking about the Midwest and values and things that last forever. And in this entrepreneurship class, he said, Fred, we don't teach that here. We teach maximizing value in 3 to 5 years and selling it. That's how we create value. And I said, well, that's not exactly what I believe. And he suggested that maybe I should teach a course on that. And so that's when I started diving into really understanding the workings of sustainability and how you think about it. And I've been teaching that course for about 10 years now. One of the key things that most people think about when they think about sustainafability is they think about this trade-off. They say, well, I'll do it when I get wealthy enough, or after I've created enough value, I can start doing these nice things. And so they think of it as a zero-sum game. If I do something good for society or good for the environment, it's taking away from the growth of the company or the financial prowess of the company. And what I've learned is that it really is complementary. That you can and should be trying to do both. And that not only is it good for the business, but it can be good for the community and good for the individuals involved, good for the environment, society. It truly is one of those that can be a win-win-win. The place of where it starts is kind of, I think, undefinable. I think it can start in many different places. We certainly have thought about our purpose as an organization, and we've actually come to the conclusion as an organization that our purpose is to make a positive impact on society and the environment and be able to make a profit doing that. So it's an important element for us to think about how that can be a both and so that sets the tone. And our objective as an organization is to be all about sustainability and innovation so that we can have those two working hand in hand. And in fact, the title of my course at one point in time was called Sustainability as a Driver for Innovation. And in fact, it can be. As you take a look at these very difficult issues, we have in front of us right now a very significant question about energy. We've got a lot of folks in denial about that we want to look back and say we've just been fine, we're going to be fine in the future. And in fact, it's not fine. We've got some pretty rough time in front of us, and there's no simple solution. It isn't just a matter of, in the case of oil, it isn't just a matter of drilling more holes in the ground. We've got something like 2% of the world's resources, and we've got 4% of the world's population, and we're consuming 25% of the oil. And so there's just that isn't going to work. That equation, that just is not going to be something that we can plan on going forever. So using that as a mindset, how do we as a business think about that? We think that we need to be working on things that we can impact. For instance, in the plastics industry, we can be working at light weighting. We can make things lighter. We're very interested in that field, and we've been able to do that in our acoustics business, where how do you make things quiet and light? It's a very interesting conundrum for us that we've solved. We've got some creative solutions as a result of that. We've been looking at renewable energy. So we've got a renewable energy division now that is addressing that. And we started out thinking about doing rooftop small wind turbines, and that's hasn't turned out to be as good. The economics don't work out so well, but we've morphed that into a real development organization now. So we're actually able to develop what we call behind-the-meter distributed energy solutions that are involving solar and wind. So we think about how we can solve these problems, and then we develop our solutions for them so that we're staying not just even but ahead of the game from an innovation standpoint. Triple bottom line being social, environmental, and financial, and the idea that there are more than just the financial side of it. I prefer to personally think of it as impact. What kind of impact can we make in the world? As businesses, we have this wonderful opportunity to make a tremendous positive impact in the world. And we can choose to do that in many different ways. And many define that as making as much money as you can and then giving some of that back. And I always like to quip, if you're giving it back, it means you took it in the first place. But the objective here is to be able to intertwine your business model with this positive impact on society and environment. It's really a sound business concept. The idea that we are, can do anything we want to do in business as long as we make money, and then we can use that money to do good things, is really it's an okay philosophy, but there's so much more potential if you weave it into your business model as well. The concept in its simplest form is starting with something good and then figuring out how to make that good business. And maybe the best example of that is our hydrated BioSand water filter that we're doing in our group we call Triple Quest, which is a group that's really coming up with solutions for developing countries that are going to help people be healthy and help them be able to have a good life from the standpoint of being able to earn a good living. You can't earn a good living if you can't be healthy, and so you start with health as your basic concept. And so these are products that help folks in developing countries. And the BioSand water filter was an idea that was presented to us as an opportunity for investment, that we could be doing this, first of all, just helping people make these out of concrete. Well, concrete BioSand water filters are about 300 pounds. And to try to transport them into rural villages is difficult. And yes, it used some local labor, but it was a very slow process. And so we decided to invest in a plastic mold to be able to make these, and contacted the inventor and developed our relationship so that we could in fact be legally responsible for having this distribution around the world. And we started initially with a nonprofit, and that didn't work well for the nonprofit. They had some difficulties. So we teamed up with the WinQuest Group, an investment group here in Grand Rapids. And we are now in our third year of making this go from a very small fledgling business to something that's quite powerful at this point in time. We've impacted over 250,000 lives at this point in time by distributing these filters, and we're not intending to lose money on this. We're intending to make profit on it. We've got to demonstrate that yet, but it's in fact something that we're very close to proving. I mean, when you think about the market's very large. There are over 2 million people die each year from waterborne illnesses around the world, and they are very preventable. At any given time, a very large percentage of the people in hospital beds around the world are there because of waterborne illnesses, and this addresses that market and does it very effectively. It's a relatively low cost. It lasts for 10 years plus. It doesn't have any electricity requirements. It doesn't have any moving parts. It doesn't have any requirements for replacing the medium. It's a very robust model that can be useful for a long, long time. Well, the pink cart story is a wonderful story. Joanne Perkins, who leads our container group, tells this story that both her mother and her grandmother succumbed to cancer when they were 51 years old. So when she turned 52, it's unusual that she revealed her age, but when she turned 52, she was very pleased with that event and felt as the oldest of the family that had achieved that she had a special responsibility to mark that occasion. And she just had this idea that maybe we could turn our trash containers into a pink container, and she contacted the American Cancer Society, and they agreed, and they liked the concept. We're donating $5 per container that is sold to the American Cancer Society for breast cancer awareness in the very region that they are purchased. So if a community buys a significant number of them, they get all that money for that particular city. And we've now donated over $250,000, and over 50,000 carts have been sold. We just had our first community that bought 15,000 that they want to distribute throughout the community. So it's an entire community that is rolling out pink carts every week. And it's been good for us in that we now have kind of a new way of communicating with our ultimate consumer, the end user, through Facebook. We've got I think it's up to 40,000 Facebook fans now, and it's something that gives us a new area of social media that we would not have had before. But it really feels good that it's helping from a health standpoint, helping with breast cancer awareness. We all have a breast cancer story in our lives, and this is very important to me as well. We actually started Cascade for the Home as a result of our work in having a channel to market through what we call Choose Up, which is an online capability, and we were aggregating in Choose Up online this thinking about sustainability, so all the sustainable products, and they were largely around energy conservation and energy usage. But there was also some desire to do something a little more using recycled materials and that sort of thing. So Samia Brown, who works with us internally, had a passion for following this, and made the pitch, and we have been supporting it now for a little over a year. And she has been successful in getting this into several retailers around the country. And what's interesting is that it is aggregating these sustainable products, so it's very consistent with our thinking. And the retailers really like that because they're used to putting things on the shelves that fit a particular product, and they may intersperse something that is perhaps got recycled content, but they hadn't been able to figure out how to put those all together. So this is several different commodities being aggregated on a single end cap or in a particular area that is attractive to consumers. And in the retail world, if it sells, it succeeds. So we're finding that this is selling quite well at this point. The sustainability notion is something that certainly can drive any organization and doesn't necessarily have to result in lots of diversification. But for us, and for me in particular, I like kind of doing different things. So it's people accuse me of maybe bending over for picking up shiny pennies, but that fits my personality from that standpoint. We do have 14 business units, and some would say that's too many. But I like the diversity because I think it provides a platform for growth in many different areas. And it does mean that we have to get expert in those areas. So it's not a matter of just kind of sprinkling our resources around. We have to be able to demonstrate that we can in fact have good growth in each of those areas. The diversity really comes from an overall desire to want to build a channel to market and then manufacture for that channel. So many times when we are manufacturing to an OEM, we are able to get our innovative ideas across, but they're always filtered because we don't see the end user needs quite as much as we could if we were directly involved with that channel to the market. So in the case of retail, it's very much involved with us understanding what the consumer needs and wants, and as we get that voice of the customer, we're able to really provide innovative solutions with what we do well as an organization, is providing those kinds of creative thoughts and ideas that meet the need of the customer, and we can hopefully be delighting the customer in areas that they don't know that they need yet. But that's the kind of thing that we're driving towards. So we want to have a good channel to market and then manufacture for that channel. I think of Kaskade as demonstrating something that I think can work. And so from that standpoint, I like the idea that we're out in front of some of these things. Of course, there is the challenge of trying to make sure that doesn't result in the business being diverted, or that it takes away from the financial prowess of the organization. But in general, I believe that there needs to be a little tension between the smooth production of things and being able to create that next new thing out there. And if it's too easy, if it's too content, you probably need to stir it just a little bit. We've been very fortunate. I mean, the growth over the last 3 years since the Great Recession has been good for us. We're all 3 years have been double-digit growth and close to 20% this past year. So it's growth that we are very fortunate to have, and yes, some of it is, maybe a lot of it is because we're willing to take some of these looks at new things. But it is interesting how symbiotic that is. The BioSand water filter is a very small project right now, but it is introducing us to new players and to getting us into new areas. We're doing some international work now that we would not have done without it. We have some interest from suppliers and others that we wouldn't necessarily have without that plan, that program. So it has a way of helping the relationships throughout the company. We certainly have our platforms for growth established with 14 of these areas. We are intentionally doing that so that we can become expert in them and grow them. But it's also enough diversity so that if something happens with one, or if it should merge in another area, or something should go away, we are able to retain the strength of the organization. We don't have all our eggs in one basket, if you will. Secondly, I think that we can help inform some policy around what business can do from the standpoint of solving some of our most intractable problems. Our Welfare to Career program is demonstrated that we can save on average about $10,000 per person for the state of Michigan that's involved in this kind of a program. We retain at very high percentages, 97% plus per month of our folks that are on welfare that are working here stay with us month after month. And that's something that not many programs can claim as a result of going from welfare to work, people often say. We say career because we want them to stay with us. We want them to be here a long time. We've developed a career path for them. So we have people that enter at one level and can grow into significant other levels so that they can better their financial resources as a result. This kind of work can, in fact, impact positively on the state. If we can figure out how to employ folks off welfare, our experience is that there's a lot of people on welfare that really are very good employees, and they need support. They just need support getting through that transitional phase. And we learn how to do that. In fact, we even have a state social worker that's on the premises that helps us solve those problems. So it's a pretty interesting program. We've actually got a consulting arm now that helps people adapt these sorts of things. So I hope we can do more of that. We've got another program we're working now with returning citizens, so that people that are formerly in prison that are now returning to their communities, they need a job. If they're going to be able to be successful, they need to be able to be employed. I'm very proud of the folks that we have selected here to be able to do that. Jahan McKinley is a great example. He started with us 2 years ago. Within 6 months, he was a supervisor with us, and we're just thrilled with his natural abilities that he has developed. He spent 5 years before he was released preparing himself for this opportunity, and we're just the great recipient of his work. The overarching philosophy, if you will, is that I want to be sure that everybody who works within Cascade Engineering knows they are valued, and knows they're valued as a human being, and knows that they're valued because they're doing valuable work. And those are two very important aspects. And knows is an important word, not just feels or patronized, but really feels deeply, knows deeply that they are valued. And so we spend a fair amount of time explaining to people when they first come to work for us that these are what we expect. This is what the culture is about here. We talk about anti-racism. We've decided to be an anti-racism organization. What does that mean? Well, that means that we don't tolerate inappropriate behavior. It means that we respect everybody that's working here. It means that if you act inappropriately, it can cost you your job. And we just make that clear to folks. And we go to great lengths to try to explain what that means. And we even do some diversity theater where we bring in some actors and have them act out scenes that are involving not just racism, but all the other isms that are out there, and how inappropriate behavior can lead to conflict and can lead to really waste in the organization. And we work at having the actors act that out, and then the audience has an opportunity to suggest ways in which that might be changed for that particular scene. And we use actual scenes that have actually happened in the organization, so it's a powerful way to exhibit that kind of corrective behavior we hope people will take when they join us. Automotive, from our standpoint, has shrunken its importance to our total portfolio. It's now about 20-25% of our total business. So it's a lot less than it used to be at 80 or 90% at one point in time. But it's an area that's still very important to us. The automotive industry is one that has gone through lots of cycles. The most recent downturn was pretty severe for lots of folks, and we were not unlike lots of people, having lost maybe 40% of our orders in a quarter. So it's one that we do want to make sure we have around. We have to find those niches that we can be contributing to. As an innovative, sustainable company, we need to find those areas that they want to have innovation and sustainability involved in. And I think that there is a growing awareness now, especially as they have this new mandate for 54.5 miles per gallon. And we have some good ideas about how we can do that. Our lightweighting, stay tuned. We've got some ideas there that can help dramatically in that area. We've got some projects we're working on that can take some of the VOCs out of the coatings. So we're working heavily on trying to be a little more on the environmentally helpful side. As those kinds of products that we'll be providing for the automotive industry, as opposed to another Me Too, if you will, in terms of trying to survive in that environment. We want to be on the creative side. The B Corp's a relatively new idea, about 3 or 4 years old, started by 3 very successful young entrepreneurs that have decided that they wanted to help recognize those organizations that are wanting to be known as in the sustainable field. And so they've created a set of standards that can kind of take the noise out of I'm more sustainable than you type of thing, and you can actually sign up for a rating and be certified as a B Corporation. And you are signing up to be allowing yourself to be transparent about that, so that you will your ratings can be seen. You can see ours on the website, and you can see how we're doing in all the various areas. And you're willing to change your bylaws to be able to say that you'll consider stakeholders other than just the shareholders when making important decisions. And it's a commitment to becoming better and wanting to make a more positive influence. So it gives the consumer and the customers a way of evaluating whether or not the company is really walking the talk. It's really catching on. There are over 500 organizations now that are certified as B Corporations. We're the largest until Patagonia just signed on, which is great, and I had fun helping in that process a little bit. But it's a really good organization. I think it's also looking into a reporting technology for international businesses, so that there will be an investor quality to this as well. So it's I think one of the interesting things about the emerging, what I call the emerging sustainable economy, is that we are beginning to see investors, entrepreneurs, consumers, all willing to look at the sustainable world a little more closely and actually willing to buy and invest their time and their money in making this happen. So I think it's an emerging field. I don't think it's anywhere near the popular middle yet. It's still emerging, but I think it makes so much sense that it's worth a second look by lots of folks. I think it's worth investing in. I think we're seeing that there's a broader number of people that are realizing, for instance, that our resources are not infinite, that we need to be able to think about that as a real constraint. And we've got, even governments are willing to think about how business can interact with them in a new way and to be able to help solve some of these problems. So these are the indicators of an emerging sustainable economy. I think it would be terrific if the country were to adopt that, and even West Michigan or Michigan, as we think about that. What would it be like if we had a concentration of B Corps in Michigan, for instance, or West Michigan? What would that say about the state? Would that be attractive to those folks who are interested in this kind of life in the future? We are looking for in-migrants, if you will, into Michigan. This could be a real attractor. Kaskade is an organization that is creative, innovative, and really, I think we want to be known as the organization that is thinking ahead of the curve, because when we're thinking about sustainability, we're thinking about those things that are long-term. And as a private company, we get a chance to think about the long-term, more so than those that are public and are being required to report their earnings every quarter. We can be a little more patient about how we're going to earn that going forward, and we can be exploring in those areas that are going to be providing the solutions for the long term, and that will be, we're trying to build the concept of not having to worry about the spike in problems that can possibly come. A spike in the cost of oil and gasoline is one of the reasons I drive a Volt. I like to say that my Volt right now has got 150 miles per gallon average from the time I bought it, and I'm going up on that. It's been weeks since I stopped and got on the gasoline. I don't worry about the price of gasoline. And that's the kind of thing that we need as a country to be able to lower our demand. We're not going to get there by increasing supply. We got to lower demand. I know that doesn't thrill the oil companies that much, but I'd much rather make plastics out of oil than I would to burn it up as a fuel. And I think it's a wonderful molecule, and we should be able to have that molecule around for a long, long time, and we will. But we do need to reduce our demand. That's the only way we're going to get price down at this point in time. I hope that Cascade Engineering is thought of as the kind of organization where we are innovative, creative, and thinking about the future, because we're focusing on sustainability and innovation as our key elements, and we can deliver solutions that are useful, creative, and profitable at the same time.
When it came to launching our image into the world, WE was really the only choice for me and my company. Whether we were in need of a website, hosting service, commercial, or a music video, it didn't matter. WE literally does it all. They even produce television shows. And best of all, they provide these exceptional services at unbelievable rates. And because they're skilled at so many things, there was really no need to go anywhere else.
Get a website with hosting service for just $14.95 a month. Register a new domain for just $199 a year. Get 500 full-color business cards for just $29.99 or 1,000 full-color letterhead for just $149. Call now or log on to we-productions.com.